Hey guys, welcome back to another video. I'm Sarah from Who I Am Among the Pages, and today we are doing book rant number whatever. I should have looked before I started this, but on Dumplin by Julie Murphy. So before I get started, if you're new here, thanks for stopping by, and if you're not, thanks for sticking around. So also, before we really get into the meat of this, I usually take notes on my 5 favorite things, my 5 least favorite things in the book. But I did not do that for this book. I am super behind and I just want to try to get things filmed, and it is what it is. Also, if you are not new here, if you have watched other videos, hopefully the lighting is a little bit better. I did get a ring light tripod, so hopefully that kind of evens things out. At least no weird shadows or nothing. So let me know if you guys do notice the difference and if you like the difference. So getting started with the book itself. I believe I gave this 3 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. And just a general synopsis before I get into spoilers. This does follow a self-proclaimed fat girl, Willow Dean Dixon, who has been named Dumplin by her former beauty queen mother. She is from this little town in Texas that hosts the infamous, I don't want to say infamous, but the well-known Texas Bluebonnet pageant, and she finds herself never having been bothered by her weight or what people thought of her because of her weight, being bothered when she starts to fall for a boy and she loses her aunt that was also a big person that gave her a lot of confidence. You know, she begins to separate from her best friend. So there are a lot of topics in this book that are very heavy, and all the while set in this dramatic pageanty, oh, you can see the ring light on that, dramatic pageant background. And I am not somebody who has ever done beauty pageants, obviously. I have no background in it, no experience whatsoever. I mean, come on, look at my NASCAR hoodie. You know, so I obviously can't speak on the authenticity of like the pageant drama and that kind of thing, but it is enjoyable. There's some issues with it. So if you don't want spoilers for this book, at this point, go ahead and leave because I'm going to deep dive. So starting off like I usually do with the 5 things I did like about this book. The authenticity of it I really enjoyed. So as somebody who's always been, or for large portions of their life has always been bigger, there was a time in high school when I was, you know, I think I was like 5 pounds overweight, so I guess I never was quite a healthy weight, but I really wasn't big. I was like a size 8, and now I'm like a size 12, but you know, life goes on. But as somebody who has always, for large portions of their life, been in a bigger body, I do appreciate seeing a protagonist that struggles with the same issues. Everybody wants to see themselves in a character. Everybody wants to be represented, and you know, this is a minority category that I do fall into. I am a bigger person. So seeing that in a protagonist was really different. I don't think I've ever read a book that had a chunky protagonist other than this. And I want to address this a little bit later on, but the fact that the character is very flawed too, like not because of her weight, but just because, you know, she finds herself, you know, hating people for being skinny, for being the things that she wants to. At times she's very envious, at times she's very self-destructive. She doesn't always treat the people around her the best, and although, like I said, I'm going to talk about that a little bit, there are problems with that. I do appreciate the authenticity of that, of having that in a character. So the second thing I loved the pageant drama. So I read this, I started it right before I went down to school to move into my new townhouse, and left it here, not thinking. And then I'd read like 100 pages of it, and while I was down at school, actually watched, I think it's like season 9 or whatever, of Toddlers and Tiaras. It's on Hulu. I loved it. Like, I really enjoy the competitiveness, but there's not really high stakes behind the competition. And, you know, I'm not somebody who dresses up. I'm not somebody who wears a lot of makeup. But at the same time, I'm somebody who, like, I would love to be able to put on these big skirts and, you know, pageant dresses and makeup every day. I'd love to be able to do that. I'm not exactly that kind. I'm not very glamorous, but at the same time, I have a lot of respect for that kind of thing. And, you know, in a girly dream world, I would. Um, so I really adored, like, the glitz and glamour of it, and just seeing the pageant play out and, like, what these girls have to do. Because, again, it's something I'm not familiar with. You know, in high school, I was in FFA, so I've been in a lot of competitions. But it was never anything that involved much beyond being able to identify livestock and judge a cow and that sort of thing. That's what I was involved with. So it was just something so completely different and so dramatic and like gossipy and juicy. I just loved it. So the third thing I have to say I really enjoyed was the dynamic between Willadine and her aunt Lucy. So Lucy in the story is not around anymore. She has passed away. She has passed away about a year ago before the story takes place. And she passed away of a heart attack and was a very, very, very large woman. I think Willadine says at one point that she was about 500 pounds. So I really like the dynamic that's created between a character that isn't there, but is still very much present in the protagonist. That idea of a person that's gone sticking with you and influencing what you do, and you asking yourself like, what would they do? Would they be proud of me? That kind of thing. Like, it's very real, and at least in YA, I don't think it's done correctly a lot, and I don't think there is a necessarily textbook correct way to do this. But what Dumplin, what Willadine experiences thinking back to her aunt, was something I really appreciated, because it's at least how I experience it. Now, somebody might read this book and be like, well, you know, I don't ever think of my parent, my grandparent, my aunt, uncle, whatever, whoever the person is that they've lost, I don't ever think of them that way. So I guess that is really subjective. But for me, the way that Lucy influences Willadine is the way that my grandmother influences me, if that makes sense. Hopefully it does. I don't really think it does. So, number 4, I hope this isn't controversial, but I do appreciate the authenticity of obesity in this book, basically. So Willadine goes over like how it's hard to find clothes, and you know, you walk into a store and you're like, well, that's not gonna fit, that's not gonna fit, also that's not gonna fit. And I mean, I can usually buy clothes off the rack. The only thing I really struggle with is like dresses, because I am really self-conscious about my midsection, so I will not wear things that fit tight over my stomach. And also I don't think I've ever spoken about this, but I have a spinal fusion. I had scoliosis, had to have it corrected, and because of all my back problems, one of my hips sits higher than the other. So if things are cut and drape a certain way, then you can see my hips sitting crooked, and having extra weight around there. I do carry a lot of my weight right around, like, you know, my love handles and everything. So that makes it more obvious. And I do understand like the hesitation she has to even go in clothes stores. You know, I typically, you know, when I'd go to the mall with friends, I would really only go in Maurice's, because they had, even their, you know, straight sizes were pretty much like the large typically fit me like a large, and then they had the plus section that fit me very well too. I'd go in Torrid and look around, but I can never afford anything, and usually it isn't my style, but you know, it's nice. But other than that, I avoid stores like Aeropostale, and I don't know if anybody goes in Aeropostale anymore, but like American Eagle and all those places. I won't even go in there because I just feel like crap about myself. And we see Willadine kind of battling that with herself, like her saying there's no reason I should be ashamed, like I shouldn't feel this way, but she still does, and she's acknowledging it, and we're seeing her tussle with that. So something that is so near and dear to me, I really appreciate seeing in the book, but also she talks about, you know, being uncomfortable with a pair of pants on, like with a belt, because it kind of divides your stomach. It's just like generally kind of being physically uncomfortable when it comes to moving around. And yeah, like I don't know if that makes sense. And, you know, I don't know if anybody else has experienced that or really thought about that experience. But for me, it was very, very real. And also, you know, the fact that Lucy did die of complications from obesity. You know, we're seeing a book that tries to focus on body positivity, you know, of accepting yourself for who you are and being happy in the body you're in. Um, you know, but we also see the potential consequences of, you know, not being healthy or not making changes. So I felt like that was a really well-rounded approach to show a character that is trying to be confident, that is, you know, ends up, she's in a pageant. I mean, that's like the brave, to me, that's one of the bravest things that a big girl could do. So we see her try to be confident and try to be that glamorous, maybe not glamorous, but outgoing and confident person. But we still, the writer, what's her name, Julie Murphy, still chooses to show us that yes, there are consequences to this. Just like there's consequences to every action. I mean, it's not like, you know, obesity is the only thing that has consequences to it. The fifth thing I did like about this book, I hope nobody hates me for this. I really liked the friends. I don't know why somebody would hate me for this, but I really did like the friends. There are some problems with the friendships in this story, but I really enjoy a good, like, you know, it's the day after Christmas, so Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer story of like these misfits coming together and like finding a companionship because they are different and because they have been kind of pushed away from what the society that they had been involved in, and seeing them kind of create their own where they are, I don't want to say normal, but where they are empowered and happy. And I think that definitely happened in this book because we see Willadine come together with several characters that have been kind of pushed away for one reason or another. You know, one girl has corrective shoes that she has to wear, so one has like a really thick sole on it, and they make fun of her. Other kids make fun of her for being like Frankenstein. Another is a lesbian in a very small town in Texas where that is not okay. And, you know, another just doesn't, you know, she's chunky. She just doesn't quite fit in. She's a little different. And we see characters like that come together in the story pretty flawlessly. There are problems again. But we see them come together kind of naturally over circumstances. I don't think it was as forced as it potentially could have been. I think Julie Murphy chose a very soft transition, if I think that's the best way to put it, like a very gradual arch from like where they were separate into where they ended up as friends. And of course they all go to the pageant together, and I think they ended up being very positive for each other. So that all being said, there are a lot of problems with this book, and that is ultimately why I did rate it 3 out of 5 stars, because it was very entertaining and I really, really liked it, but I had a lot of problems with it. So number 1 is just the hatred of other characters. So it really the hatred of other characters based on things out of their control. So, you know, Willadine is kind of battling her insecurity about her weight. So insecurity really is based on being afraid of what other people are going to think about you. You don't want to be hated for something you can't help. For that, that's her weight. But then we see her, like when her best friend Ellen starts to drift away from her and become friends with these girls that she works in a boutique clothing store with, we see Willadine be like, oh, well, you know, she's skinny, she's this, she's that, and hate her. I can't remember her name was, Callie, I think her name was. Hate her for her body because she's thin, and, you know, kind of assigning her this pedestal almost, like she's better than me because she's pretty, or not because she's pretty, because she's skinny, and I hate her for that. You don't know why somebody's thin. Like, yeah, you don't know why somebody's fat, you don't know why somebody's thin. And I thought it was really hypocritical for Willowdean to hate somebody based on their weight. Because these are pageant girls, but at the same time, you also don't know why they're doing pageants exactly. It could be extreme parental pressure. It could be because they want to do it and they dream of being Miss America. You don't know. And I think this kind of perpetuated in a way that hatred of other people based on their body. And while I do understand like the envy and the jealousy, and I do applaud Julie Murphy for putting that in there, because I think it makes a flawed character, and unfortunately, it's nature. It's, you don't want to, and you shouldn't, but sometimes you do envy people. But it was so overdone at points, like, I don't know. Like, I felt if it had been a mention here and there, it'd be one thing, but it was pretty constant. It happened several times, and I just thought it was a little bit hypocritical. Just me, though. Maybe, hopefully. So, second thing is the way Willowdean treats people around her. She definitely uses people. She is really kind of a toxic person. So her friends that she ends up making for the pageant, Millie, Amanda, and I cannot remember what the other girl's name was, but they're kind of the outcasts that she becomes friends with, that really kind of accept her and draw her in and try to pump her up, and realize that her best friend has distanced herself from Willowdean. They really are giving Willowdean their all and putting their hearts on their sleeves and trying to help her. Willowdean's like, yeah, she looks funny. Yeah, look at her buck teeth. Eh. These people are being so nice to you. And you just, like, she's like, well, at least I'm not that fat. I think that was Millie that she talks about right at the beginning of the book. She's like, well, at least I'm not that fat. There's one quote, it's right at the beginning of the book. I'm not going to look through it right now. I should have gotten this ready. She's like, I might be fat, but at least I'm not. She's like, elastic waist pants fat or something. And come on, that's just rude. Like, again, it makes for a flawed character, but at the same time, there comes a point where you can admit natural feelings without the character being, like, bully, sort of. Like, I don't remember her ever saying these things out loud, but it's still not very nice. And I don't know, that bothered me, the amount that was talked about, if that makes sense. So, the third thing was the consistency of Dolly Parton, this book. I love Dolly Parton. I am a country music fan. I have always been a country music fan, and I always will be a country music fan. But Dolly Parton really did not play a significant portion of this book. It was the equivalent of the character being like, well, I really like strawberry jam. And everything she does, everything has to be strawberries. She has to eat only strawberry jam sandwiches. It felt like kind of a cop-out to have something be so important in the story. Like, I will always associate Dolly Parton with this book. When it kind of felt like she was using Dolly as a crutch to build Willowdean's personality. Like, if it could have been done a little differently, because I think it's meant to show, how somebody else can give you strength and how you can be inspired by somebody, but it's a little bit overdone in this book, personally. So, what was that? Number 3? Number 4, that I didn't care for in this book is the romance. Will is horrible. I mean, she is horrible, just toxic nightmare girlfriend to the people around her. So, she starts flirting with this guy that she works with, and then she's like, oh, I can't do that. He's not my type, yada, yada, yada. He's too good for me. So she, kind of blows him off. He gets another girlfriend. She gets mad, so she goes work somewhere else. So you quit your job. You want to be a powerful character, and then you quit your job because you flirted with a guy that's not dating another girl. Okay. And then Mitch shows up, and he's, like, genuinely interested in her, and he's quite the gentleman. Like, he brings her a homecoming, I can't remember what they're called. Basically, like a big corsage. He's really a gentleman, treats her so well. Brings her home and, introduces her to his family that's flawed and admits the flaws, talks to her and is really open with her. And she kind of cheats on him. You know, she's talking about being so attracted to Bo, and she knows she shouldn't be, but she still is, and you know, she should end things with Mitch. Well, yeah, I mean, that's not right to do to somebody. I mean, if that had happened to her, there would have been outrage, and I don't think there is. But yet, Will is doing that to two other people. Yeah, that bothered me. And third, or not third, fifth, I guess, was just Willow Dean's attitude. Like the way she treats people in general. She uses people. She's not very nice to her mother. She's judgmental. And yes, a flawed character is a good thing. It makes for a realistic character. But you can have a flawed character without them being rude and a bully. Sorry. That's what I said. But yeah, altogether, I did like this book. It was entertaining to read, but there was a lot of problems with the main character. Really, the characters around her, I felt like were fine. They're actually pretty well developed and very interesting to read about. But Willa Dean was just kind of toxic. So yeah, honestly, I probably wouldn't have given it a 4 to 5 stars if Willa Dean just hadn't been quite so horrible to people. But just because of that, I don't want to perpetuate you know, fat people being better than skinny people, and I think that's, I don't know, like, I feel like that's kind of what Willa Dean, that book inadvertently pushes, because Willa Dean is so judgmental at times towards, like, the skinny pageant girls, the ones that follow that stereotype. Yeah, it's a complicated issue when you get into the things that Willa Dean does. If it hadn't been for those, if she had been just a more, have the same honesty of being envious and being jealous about things you shouldn't be jealous about, that's not a problem to me. But the way it constantly pushes that's where I think it's a little bit problematic. But yeah, there was great inclusion. There was pretty good inclusion. The voice in the story was pretty funny. We definitely got to know Willa Dean. We really understood who she was, what she was about, what was important, and I think that does make for a very good story. So yeah, that pretty much wraps up this video, I think. I feel like I'm forgetting something, but I don't know what it would be. So yeah, so I will have in the next video some updates, what I'm going to do for this next year. I'm trying to stick to goals better, because, you know, time's slipping by. If 2020 taught us anything, anything can happen at any moment. So yeah, the next video will have some news and updates about what's going to be happening on this channel and on my Wattpad and everything else. Yeah, so I hope you guys had a very Merry Christmas, very happy holidays. I know I sure did. You know, I was so fortunate to have my family around, you know, following the COVID precautions, but we were very, very lucky this year, despite everything. So yeah. My Goodreads will be linked down below in case you want to keep up with what I'm reading, and my Wattpad will also be linked down below in case you want to keep up with what I'm writing. Other than that, I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and just keep it on.